Once again, good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. As always, I am Zak, the Corruption Detector, and this is another edition of Red Pill News. I hope you're having a lovely day. My day is going great. I just learned that I'm going to be having dinner with Jim Jordan tonight, and I'm going to tell you guys all about it when I get back. But first of all, today we're going to be talking storms, we're going to be talking deltas, we're going to be talking 10 days of darkness, some very interesting things coming up on Twitter. I'm going to show you guys what I mean. Also, very unfortunately, it looks like Kayleigh McEnany is the latest Republican operative to come down with the beer bug. What does that mean for the White House press pool? We're going to talk about it. Also, Burisma is in court in Ukraine, and I'm sure you'll all remember Joe Biden has been named in that criminal complaint. They've gone on the record about payments made to Joe Biden. We're going to learn about that. Also, it looks like the president has agreed to declassify some very particular documents that Devin Nunes has been asking for, and this is a huge development in terms of the Spygate scandal. We're going to go through that in detail. We might be going through some more stuff. I don't know if we'll have time, but either way, sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a very brief word from our sponsor. We're coming up on just about 1 month since wildfires started in California, Oregon, and now Seattle. Finding yourself in the breakout of a wildfire leaves you vulnerable to a number of things: falling trees, hazardous air quality, ash, and the fires themselves. If you are ever in such a situation, you want to ensure you're as prepared as you can possibly be. And that's why I have a solar water heater. It's solar powered, so I've made hot water, coffee, tea, and many other things in the middle of the outdoors. I keep one in my car, and I have another one in my bug-out bag at home at all times just for emergencies. Now, if you want your own solar water heater, all you have to do is go to solarwaterheater.com or click the link in the description or pinned comment below. And remember, when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. First of all, today is the 3-year delta of the president's infamous statement where he told the press maybe it's the calm before the storm. Let's go ahead and take a listen, because this moment, in my opinion, will live in history for all eternity.
Do you guys know what this represents?
Tell us, sir.
I don't know, maybe it's the calm before the storm.
What's the storm?
Could be the calm before the storm.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
That infamous comment, at the time seen as perhaps some type of a throwaway, but the press asking, "What storm, Mr. President?" and he tells them, "You'll find out." And we certainly have found out. We are literally in the midst of that storm at this very moment. Now, here's an article from Time magazine at the time talking about the fact that the president made that statement. President Donald Trump warned of the calm before the storm while posing with a group of military leaders at the White House Thursday, October 5th, 2017. At the time, there is no way that people could have known exactly what the president meant, but looking back in retrospect, it's such a formative moment. If you too have been one of those people who've been reading these posts since the very beginning, seeing that phrase brought up and immediately remembering this statement by the president, I'm sure it gave you shivers at the time. I remember when the president said this, and it gave me shivers not even knowing what he meant, but really I was hoping that he was pointing to the fact that he was going to be actually draining the swamp, fulfilling that campaign promise to clean up Washington, D.C., and to fix America and to give us our country back. Now, not only is it the 3-year delta of the calm before the storm, but we actually have Tropical Storm Delta forming off the Gulf Coast right now as we speak. Tropical Storm Delta on the 3-year delta of the president making that infamous statement. What do you think the chances of that coincidence are? How cool would that be if President Trump told us that the storm had arrived and it was Tropical Storm Delta? Now, I want to show you one more thing in relation to this whole situation. This right here is a tweet from Coraline Elise, and it is potentially an explanation of the 10 days of darkness phrase. Let's take a look at this. Now, in 1582, 10 days, October 5th today through October 14th, were erased from time with the introduction of the Gregorian Calendar. And it continues on to show us the actual Gregorian calendar itself. This is a very old document from 1582. And we entered a new time, or a new age, so to speak, that was supposedly closer to the actual movement of the Earth around the sun. But with the introduction of the Gregorian calendar in 1582, it created a new schedule for the months and gave us the 365 days that we have per year right now. Now, the Gregorian calendar is today's internationally accepted civil calendar, and it's also known as the Western Christian calendar. Although it's not the only calendar, it is the most widely used calendar in the world today, and it uses the international standard for representation of dates and times. It is a solar-based calendar based on that 365 days divided into 12 months, giving us irregular months. It also divided our weeks into 7 days, and what it replaced was the Julian calendar. It didn't actually reflect the true time that it takes for the Earth to orbit the sun. Now, what's really interesting about the Gregorian calendar is that it produced this phantom time hypothesis theory. Now, it's a historical conspiracy theory asserted by Herbert Illig and first published in 1991, and it hypothesizes that there was a conspiracy by the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, and possibly the Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII to fabricate the Anno Domini dating system retrospectively in order to place them at the special year of AD 1000 and to rewrite history. What this did was legitimize Otto's claim to the Holy Roman Empire, and Illig believed that this was achieved through the alteration, misrepresentation, and forgery of documentary and physical evidence. According to this scenario, the entire Carolingian period, including the figure of Charlemagne, is a fabrication with a phantom time of 297 years. That would be from AD 614 to AD 911, having been added to the early Middle Ages. Now, some of the evidence for this theory is the scarcity of archaeological evidence that can be reliably dated to AD 614 to 911, and the presence of Romanesque architecture in the 10th century Western Europe, which suggested that the Roman era was not as long as conventionally thought. So what if the introduction of the Gregorian calendar was essentially the introduction of the cabal itself? If this was a conspiracy put into play in order to take over the world, and it began here, perhaps the 10 days of darkness is pointing exactly to that. And by bringing it up in these posts, we are pointing to the end of that cabal. Now, what's the best way to end that cabal? Well, President Trump has just announced through Mark Meadows that he has requested the declassification of documents that Devin Nunes has been asking for quite some time, which include the second and third Danchenko interviews. Let's go ahead and take a listen to this clip from Fox and Friends this morning, because this is where Mark Meadows announced it.
Good morning. Nice to be with you. And obviously, this is an important day as the president continues to improve and is ready to get back to a normal work schedule. He's already this morning, we've already had a couple of discussions on items that he wants to get done. Candidly, has already tasked me with getting some declassification rolling in a follow-up to some of the requests that Devin Nunes and others have made.
What are the details for today? What time will he be leaving, and do you think he should be leaving?
All right, so there you have it. Mark Meadows announcing DECLAS, additional DECLAS, on Fox and Friends this morning, and they just breeze right past it. Not asking what the documents are going to say, not asking what they will reveal, but you can bet this is going to be a very important declassification. We've been also talking about President Trump's diagnosis a lot over the last couple of days, because that's basically dominated the news cycle this weekend. And the quarantine period for having the beer bug is apparently 10 days as well. So could the 10 days of darkness also be pointing to POTUS's quarantine period when he has to stay out of the limelight? Let's take a look at some more reporting on that incoming declassification. All right, so this declassification of these interviews with Danchenko are critical to the Spygate scandal and to determining exactly what happened. Why is that? Well, Igor Danchenko is that Russian operative that was the subsource for Christopher Steele. He was the Russian agent who was essentially hired by the Clinton campaign. Not directly, but of course through Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele used his innuendo and gossip to create the Steele dossier with all of those lies about President Trump, which were essentially a bunch of Russian disinformation. disinformation. Now, these interviews are really, really important because they're going to give us some real insight into exactly what Danchenko did, what he said, what he was told to do, and who told him to do it. It'll also reveal to us whether or not there was any contact between him and the Clinton campaign directly. Now, being that he is the primary source for the Steele dossier and that Steele himself is an ex-British intelligence agent, we know that Danchenko was a Russian spy and that James Comey knew about it the entire time. Comey used Russian and British disinformation to try to run this interference campaign against President Trump. FBI Director Christopher Wray and the Clowns in America Director Gina Haspel have been sitting on this evidence the entire time and refusing to give it to congressional investigators. Now, we also learned over the weekend that Gina Haspel, the director of the Clowns in America herself, is also directly involved in stalling that declassification of documents. And now we've got some new information. Today, from several sources within the intel community, we're hearing that Clowns in America director Gina Haspel is actually banking on President Trump to lose in November. Why? So that she can keep those Russiagate documents hidden. This is being reported by The Federalist, who was, of course, the same media outlet that just the other day reported that they had been hearing that Haspel was the one blocking these documents. Now, Clowns in America director Gina Haspel is reported to be personally blocking these documents for declassification. And it's the release of these key Russia documents that she doesn't want out because she's hoping that President Trump is going to lose, and this way she's going to be able to protect the Clowns in America. This is coming from multiple senior U.S. officials to The Federalist. Now, the sources are also saying that Gina, who served directly under former Clowns in America director John Brennan as the spy agency's chief in London in 2016 and 2017, is concerned that the declassification and release of these documents, which detail what the Clowns in America were doing during that time, during the election and during the transition period, would, of course, embarrass the Clowns in America and even potentially implicate Haspel herself. Haspel and FBI Director Christopher Wray are hoping that President Trump will lose, one of the sources said, because it's the only chance they have of keeping their jobs. Continuing on, they're banking on Biden winning and keeping them where they are. Now, The Federalist reported last week that Haspel herself is the main roadblock in the U.S. intelligence community, stopping these important documents from seeing the light of day. Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe released that declassified summary last week, which disclosed that Russian intelligence officials were aware that former Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton had, of course, planned the entire Russia collusion smear against President Trump as an effort to hide her email scandal. As part of that operation, Clinton, of course, hired a foreign agent who was himself working for a sanctioned Russian oligarch to spread unverified smears against President Trump. That would be Danchenko, and that's why it's so important that President Trump has now declassified those interviews with Danchenko himself. The source continues, it's far more important to Haspel to block any embarrassment of herself or her agency than to have full transparency and accountability. This is not a source protection issue, it's an embarrassment issue. Now, officials also accused Haspel of repeatedly lying to the White House about the status of documents that are in the pipeline for declass and release. These officials said that Haspel has consistently provided baseless excuses for her failure to produce certain documents, falsely claiming that she can't physically locate the documents or that her agency doesn't technically own them and therefore they can't release them. The source continues, Haspel has repeatedly lied to the president about the status of the documents to be declassified. She will claim they don't know where they are or which agency technically owns them, and then we'll find out that she had them the entire time and just didn't want them to see the light of day. The frustration with Haspel is reaching nuclear levels, one official said. And of course, the Federalist has reached out to the Clowns in America Public Affairs Office, but they have absolutely no comment on this. Now, I want to take us to a post from our favorite Anon from just the other day because I think that it really sums up the reason why we're seeing this from the intel community. Now, we've had a couple of posts from our favorite Anon that actually directly addressed Gina. Specifically, this one here in March of 2019, talking about Edward Snowden and the release of the information initially. And our favorite Anon makes a reference to something called the Shadow Brokers. Now, the Shadow Brokers is supposedly a hacking collective, and they used to be on Twitter, and I used to follow them just to see what was going on with them. And they frequently made direct references to Gina Haspel, acting as if they were working underneath Gina Haspel, and perhaps that is the case. Now, our favorite Anon says, can you make the connection? Who provided the source code to shadow brokers? Define spook, define shadow, do spooks hide in the shadows, and then stand strong, Gina. I believe that our favorite Anon was telling Gina to do the right thing. But then we have this post from just the other day. Post 4794, making reference to the original article from last week about Gina Haspel blocking the release of those documents. And it says, some believe the protection of agency is what matters most. That is what is being alleged by the fact that Gina is refusing to release these documents. Some believe the declassification, public exposure of truth, and rebuilding of agency is what matters most. This is what our favorite Anon and us fellow digital soldiers obviously believe. Now apply the same to the FBI, apply the same to state. If Christopher Wray is also in league with Gina Haspel in making sure that these documents aren't coming out for nefarious purposes, not necessarily because Durham asked him not to, then that clearly means that he needs to be replaced, and the FBI must be broken down and rebuilt as well. Now, we've got Mike Pompeo at the State Department, and I have trusted Mike Pompeo. We've been told to trust Kansas, but I believe the State Department is in the same need of being broken down and rebuilt from the ground up. At the FBI, at the Clowns in America, at the State Department, you have top-level career bureaucrats who are more interested in protecting their own reputation and protecting the agencies that they work for more than the reveal of the truth and more than the justice that we fellow digital soldiers are attempting to get. Now, any attempt to buck the system, no matter severity of crime, and they will fight back. Self-preservation. This is exactly what we've been seeing this entire time. Shadow game. Prevent public exposure of truth. Why? People united have the power. They are afraid of us regaining power and controlling our own country. Frankly, they think that we are petulant children and that it's in our own best interest to have them control us, and it's also in their best interest. And then we end with a passage from Thomas Paine from The American Crisis. At the time that Thomas Paine said these words, our country truly was in a crisis. And now, couple hundred years later, we are at a very similar crossroads with a very similar crisis. If we do not regain power, if we are not able to have this information brought to light, then we run the risk of losing our country eternally. We will never have a chance like this ever again, and if we do, it's going to be many, many years in the future. All of us will be dead and gone. This moment in time, this movement, this storm is the most important moment in the history of our country, my friends. And if these people are not willing to bring this information to light, then it's up to President Trump to replace these heads of these agencies with another individual like John Ratcliffe, somebody who is interested in bringing the truth to light and not in protecting a corrupt bureaucratic institution that has been running our country without any input from the people themselves. Now, as I'm sure you all remember, Joe Biden has been named in a criminal case in Ukraine having to do with Burisma. Until very recently, his name had been anonymous, but a judge ruled that it was not fair to keep Biden's name out of it, seeing as he is accused of criminal wrongdoing. Now, back in 2019, a Ukrainian MP alleged that Biden and his partners received $16.5 million in payments that were stolen from Ukraine as bribes. Of course, Hunter Biden had his position on the Burisma board, and of course, there was that $1 billion that was withheld from the Ukrainian government in order for Joe Biden to get his way to have the prosecutor fired. Now, very interesting information has come up during the midst of that court case in the Ukraine. And that information is that Burisma Oil and Gas has admitted to fully bribing Joe Biden. However, they dispute the amount paid. This is in that Ukrainian criminal court in that case that is ongoing as we speak. Prosecutors allege a $900,000 lump sum cash payment to Joe Biden. And Burisma says, yes, we bribed Joe Biden, but it was a different amount. Now, the only question is it more than that $900,000, or are they saying it's less than that $900,000? Now, considering the alleged $16.5 million, I tend to think that it is more than what they're saying here in court. I believe the prosecutors are probably being generous. As we learn more over the coming days, I believe that we're going to get a lot more accurate information about what exactly Joe Biden was up to, how much money he received, and just how deep that criminality goes. Now, in the Pershek District Court of Kiev, where Burisma admitted to bribing Joe Biden, they actually demanded the prosecutors refute the information that they paid that $900,000 to him and his son Biden. Now, this information was revealed through Andrei Derkach on his Facebook page. He said Burisma admitted it had given a bribe to Joe Biden. As expected, Burisma lost. In fact, gave a bribe, $900,000 for lobbying to former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden. The court separately noted Burisma, in its statement, actually does not dispute the facts of payments, only their size. That is, it agreed that it paid Biden and his son, but does not agree that these are the amounts. The fight against international democratization continues. Follow the announcement, said Derkach. Now, below is that statement from former prosecutor Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor that was fired to get that $1 billion payment. Shokin was fired by the Ukrainian government after that pressure from Joe Biden because he was investigating Biden's son, Hunter, at the time. Not just Burisma, but he was investigating Hunter Biden. Now, the statement itself is in English, but it is lengthy. So what I'm going to do is leave this in the pinned comment below so that you guys can go ahead and read through it yourself, because it goes into detail through all of the evidence that Shokin was able to gather during his investigation of Hunter Biden and his investigation of Burisma. All right, and finally, adding to the list of high-level Republicans who have come down with the beer bug, we can now add Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. She tested positive earlier this morning. She actually announced it herself. She said she is experiencing no symptoms, but her statement said, after testing negative consistently, including every day since Thursday, I tested positive for CV-19 on Monday morning while experiencing no symptoms. She added, I will begin the quarantine process and will continue working on behalf of the American people remotely. And here is her Twitter statement in its entirety. She said, no reporters, producers, or members of the press are listed as close contacts by the White House medical unit. Moreover, I definitively had no knowledge of Hope Hicks's diagnosis prior to holding a White House press briefing on Thursday. As an essential worker, I have worked diligently to provide needed information to the American people at this time. With my recent positive test, I will begin the quarantine process and will continue working on behalf of the American people remotely. The big question is here, even if she didn't have close contact with any of those reporters in the White House press pool, are they going to come down with it too? Is this a matter of the Cleveland vector, or is there also now a vector inside the White House? I do want to say it is extremely suspicious that only high-level Republicans are the ones who have come down with this, especially after all of the precautions that have been taken. Now, undoubtedly, the fake stream media, the mainstream media, are going to be attacking Kayleigh McEnany as they have attacked President Trump and any of the people in his orbit. Kayleigh, however, has done everything necessary to ensure that she did not spread this or contract it. So the real question is, how did she get it? If we see the White House press pool coming down with it, then I think we're going to be looking at a vector coming straight from the White House. All right, guys, the swamp is thick and it does not go down easily. However, I have complete confidence in the president, his abilities, and the decisions he's made to put people in the positions they're in. I think that it's only a matter of time before all of these answers are given to us, and in the meantime, we just need to keep on the mission. This is an important delta, this is an important day, and I can't wait to see what comes next. October surprise indeed. Maybe there's something else in store for Joe Biden besides this Burisma news. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am Zak, the Corruption Detector, and this was another edition of Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless. Hey guys, just one more thing. I just want to say thank you so much for watching today. If you have not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. Make sure you hit that notification bell and always consider liking and sharing this show on your favorite social media platform. If you guys want to support the channel more directly, there are ways to do that in the description below. I appreciate everything you guys have done. I wouldn't be able to do this without you, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful day.